Hi, so in this video, I want to talk about form combo box properties. Okay, so when you go and you create a combo box in a form, it has a drop-down list associated with it. Okay, and in order to have the combo boxes drop-down list set up correctly, you need to set certain properties. And there are 9 different properties that you want to set and understand so that you can adjust them in a way that you believe is the best for your users using your database. Okay, so I'm going to go over these 9 properties in this video. Okay, so let's start out with row source. And before I move on and show you about the row source property, I'm going to tell you that there is another video that explores the row source property more in detail, and I encourage you to watch that as well. Okay, so let's look at this rubric category ID here, this text box. Okay, I'm going to, instead of having it be a text box, I'm going to have it be a combo box. And basically what I want to do is I want to have a list of the different categories that are offered for a user when they are doing data entry. And I will show you what the categories look like. So here's a list of all the categories. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change this text box to a combo box. Okay. And here I have all my properties in my property sheet. And so for the row source, I'm going to click here on the Data tab, and here is the row source property. And I'm going to go ahead and provide it with a row source. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just build this using an SQL statement, and I'll use my drop-down rubric categories table, say close, and I'll bring this all down. Okay, so this says that the dot star will include all of the fields in this particular table. So if there's more fields that are added, it'll include those as well, and I don't have to go back and add those fields into this query. Okay. And then I will also bring down this rubric category for a second time, but this time I will click on the Don't Show box and I'll set it to ascending. And so now if I run it, everything is in alphabetical order. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and say save, and then I'm going to close. And now my row source is a select statement or an SQL statement. Okay. So again, if you want to know more about the row source, watch that video. So row source type, we have it as table/query. You can choose other options here, but for your final project, you need table/query. Many students will use value list, and then they will type in specific items in quotes that will show up as their items in their list. The problem with this is that it's not very flexible. If the user's needs change, then the design of the form has to change. As opposed to if you make it a table, the user can just change an entry in the table. And that's why you want table/query. So far I've talked about row source and row source type. Next I want to talk about column count. Okay, what does this refer to? Well, let's go back over and look at that. Okay, so here, let's see, under format is column count. Right now it's set at 1. Well, let's go back and look at our row source. Okay, we actually have 2 fields in our list. So column count 1 would only show this one, and we want it to show both. And so I'm going to go back, close this, and I'm going to change over here under format. I'm going to change this column count to 2. Okay. Now you could have more than that. Sometimes you'd have 3, maybe 4 in your drop-down list of columns. And the thing I want to tell you is that only one value will go into the field that you have the drop-down list for, but maybe the other items, other fields in the list are helpful for the user to understand what exactly they want to pick. And so that would be a reason why you would have column count of more than 1. Okay? So we've talked about column count, and then there's also column heads. Basically, column heads is just a heading for each column, and it's just the name of the field usually, or else if you've set the field to have a caption, the caption would be at the top of the column. Many people don't use this, but some people like it. Okay, and I will show you where that is. Let's see, right here, column heads, right under column widths and column count. So, all right, let's go back to our slide here. So we've finished column heads. Let's go to list rows. Okay, and the list rows is under the format tab here. Okay, and this is just a default value of 16. You could put it to be what you want. You could put it to 10 or whatever, or just leave it as 16. It's just the number of items that are offered when the user clicks the arrow. So maybe you only need it to be 10, or most people just don't care. They just leave it as what it is. Then next and on our list is the bound column. Okay, so bound column has to do with what field is actually going to go and be recorded into that field when the user selects a row in the drop-down list. Okay, so if I go here and I go back to my row source and we look at the, oops, sorry, if we come here and we look, all right, so we have 2 columns. Okay, now if you put bound column 1, then it's going to record the value in here. If you say bound column 2, it'll record the value here. Okay. It's been my experience that I've had difficulty saying bound column something else other than 1. I tend to just arrange my columns such that the one that's going to get recorded is on the left. I've just found it to be easier, and I've been more successful with that. Just an FYI. So bound column 1, or bound column property is right here, and you can see it's set to 1. Okay, and I will show you why we're going to record a number. Let me go back. See, this is a number, and we're going to record this as opposed to this. Okay, but so that's why it's bound column 1. Okay. Anyway, going back over here. Okay, so we went over list rows, bound column. Limit to list is next. Now, limit to list is a property where the user is limited, can be limited to what specifically is in the list, or else you can say, no, these are just suggestions. If you set it to yes, then the user has to pick what's in the list. If you set it to no, then the user can use the list as suggestions, but it's not required. And setting it to yes, I think, is really helpful often for data integrity, and I do encourage you to consider it. But for more information, I would recommend that you watch the Form Combo Box row source video. And right here is the limit to list property under the data tab. And right now it's set to no. I'm going to go ahead and set it to yes. Okay. And we'll come back here. We're almost there. So we just have limit list width and column width left. Okay. So list width is the width of the entire list. Okay. So if we come here and we come to format, here is the property list width. Okay. And it's set to auto. That means that the width of the list will be exactly the same as the width of your combo box, no matter what the width is. If it's this wide, then that's how wide your list will be. If it's this wide, then that's how wide your list will be. That's it. And I've found that it's nicer to be specific about how wide it is, because sometimes you do want your list to be wider than the actual field that you're working with, because the list has more columns in it and it needs more room to be able to show all of the columns. Whereas, if you only have one field, that doesn't need as much width because it's just one field, one item. Okay. So just to keep you aware of that. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set this to 2.5. Okay. I'm just going to set it. And then the column width. Okay. So this is how wide your columns are. Now, once again, I'll remind you, we can go back here and run, and here are 2 columns. So I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to have this column and I'll have this column. Okay. And so I can give this a width and I can give this a width. And this one seems to need more width than this one. This is just a number, whereas this one is a description and it takes more space. Okay. So I'm going to come here, let's see, to format, and here is column width. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'll set that to 0.5 semicolon 2. Okay, and notice that the 0.5 and 2 add up to be the same as this. Okay, and so then if I go into form view and I click down, I can see my list. Okay, and notice that it's wider than this because I didn't leave it at auto as far as my column widths were, my list width was concerned. I specified how wide I wanted it, and as a result I can see all the items in my list. So there's one more topic I want to talk about concerning this particular property. Now, some people might say, well, why didn't she just record table structure, table relationships, or whatever the user would want? Why didn't I have the user just record that value into this rubric category instead of having some sort of number? Okay, and the reason for that is because I may want to change what I call the essay. I may want to say paper or forms or overall. As a user, I may want to change the description of this particular category. And so if I assign it a number and the number is recorded, I can still change whatever the description says and be consistent in what I'm recording. So I'm showing the description, like what the user would might want to use, but the actual what's being recorded stays consistent. And so that encourages consistency in your data. Okay. Now, the thing is that the user doesn't necessarily want to have to deal with numbers. They probably want to see like the description, and that's all. Even though you as the designer want to record numbers, the user wants to see the description. So let's see how we can deal with that. So we're back in design view, and we can come up here to column widths. And right now we have the column widths at 0.5 for the first column and then 2 inches for the second column. Okay. So what would happen if we took and we said 0 for the first column so that it doesn't show, but it's still in the list? Okay, so that's what's gonna happen, is that it's gonna not show because I'm gonna put it as 0, but there's gonna be still the description. Okay, the number is not going to show, but the description will. So if I come over here and I go back into form view, notice that only the description shows. So the user thinks that that's what's being recorded, but in truth what's being recorded is the number. So you can still have consistency in your data. The user can change the descriptions anytime they want, and everybody's happy. Okay, so I've gone over combo box properties for forms, okay, and I've reviewed why we want to do the settings that we have in our example, okay, and so I encourage you to study them and understand them. And once again, make sure that you watch the row source combo box video. I think that will help you as well. And I believe actually that's called combo box row source property. I believe that's what it's called. But anyway, so all of these will help you one, understand the underlying of a combo box and the list that is associated with a combo box and how to set it up. And if you need to make any changes because something isn't working right. Okay? All right, hope that helps. Thanks.